Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you like this content, please give us a subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Lyndsay Ettig here on the show with us. She's a bodybuilder, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Lyndsay, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
So I'd say that I've always been pretty fit. I wouldn't say always healthy. I've always played sports. I was kind of like, the chubby girl that was always like pretty good at any sport I did. But I joined the military when I was 17, and you're kind of forced to pass height and weight, pass your PT test, all that stuff, every 6 months. So I was kind of forced to be in shape. And so I kind of tried a bunch of different, sports. I did CrossFit, mountain biking. I don't even know, like literally everything you could think of, like rock climbing, so on. And then I kind of just fell into bodybuilding. I started working with a trainer, and they're like, yeah, your body is made for this. You should try a show. And that was, I think my first show was almost 3 years ago, but I've been trying to do a show and trying to bodybuild since 2011, 2012. But it's harder than people think, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's pretty easy to set yourself up for failure. So it took me until about 2016 to really find someone that would work with me, that I believed knew what they were talking about as far as diet and nutrition goes, and as far as like my health goes. So that's kind of how I fell into it. I started with a figure show, and then my feedback from the judges on my first figure show, I got second, was, yeah, you need to do women's physique because you're about 15 pounds heavier than the girl that got first place. I was like, all right.
So I always sort of like to make the analogy where if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people in it, there's 100 different ways as to how people got their results, whether it comes to their nutrition, whether it comes to how many reps they do, what exercises they do. All are different factors, and as opposed to what works best individually for someone. When you were starting out, was that difficult for you, finding out what works specifically best for your body, knowing that if you were to go up to someone and ask for advice, they could give you some pretty good advice, but it wouldn't be stuff that would work specifically as good for you as it works for them?
I honestly think that there's a couple of things that go into play as far as, what would be the right fit for you. One, I think my bones are bigger than the girls that even compete in bikini. So that's kind of just not a given. That's a given that, it doesn't work for me. Nutrition by far is the number one most important thing. If you want to grow, you obviously have to eat more food, right? But I'm the type of body that I can gain muscle really easy, but I can also put on fat really easy. But I'm also the type of person that likes to train really hard. I've never gone into something not wanting to give it 100%. I don't, go into the gym and just go through the motions. So I think training has a lot to do with it. I think that it comes down to like the individual, their body type, their work ethic, and what they envision themselves looking like. I never, when I was younger, I was kind of insecure, and I thought, oh, I wanted to be tall and skinny and, have small arms. Well, I never was. I was 5'2". I had big arms since I was little. And I had to set like a goal that I saw myself being the best version of. So for me, being a strong, woman and doing what I love, and I do love training, I kind of, gravitated more towards like the women's physique or the women's figure. And luckily, I guess my body really responded to it because, I started like really concentrating on my weight training, and I grew pretty quick.
How did you deal with when your beginner gains started to sort of wear off? How did you sort of deal with that? Was it a hard process for you, or was it sort of easy to adapt to?
I think I still get beginner gains. So, I've lifted weights since high school, and I didn't really get serious about doing it correctly, I'd say, until about 3 years ago. I think that we have an idea of what working hard is, and until we actually train with someone that does work hard and make us do things the correct way, we don't really know what hard work is. So something that really responded well for me was I never could figure out how to connect with my back. And the minute that I learned how to connect with my back, it just started growing. The only thing that's a little frustrating for me is I have very strong legs, and they are the slowest part on my body to grow. I'm very top heavy. I'm kind of built like, an upside down triangle, which, most girls don't want. They want like the big booty and all that other stuff. I pretty much like collect all my body fat up top. I think it's maybe a German thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I got that Norwegian, that Scandinavian thing too, where that kind of is the thing. But what branch of the military did you join?
I'm in the National Guard, but it's a little bit hard to explain. So I'm active duty for the National Guard. I joined when I was 17. I deployed when I was 18 or 19. Went over to Iraq for a while. Came back, started going to school for 2 years. I hated it. And then I got offered a job working logistics, so like supply and stuff like that, out in Portland, where I'm from. And then they told me, we really like you. You should apply to be permanent. I applied to be permanent, got moved out to the middle of nowhere in Eastern Oregon, which is like, if you know where Idaho is, that's pretty much where I was at.
Ooh, yep.
And eventually I kind of made my way back west towards the Portland area and did some logistics stuff, administration stuff, and I'm finally back to where I grew up, but I'm a recruiter.
That's awesome. We've never had a recruiter on. We've had a couple other people in the military, but what would you say is one of the biggest challenges facing recruiters in this day and age?
I think, especially in the Portland area, it's very liberal, but I think that there's a bad stigma associated with the military. And especially when people see National Guard soldiers, they tend to think that they're big army. And the difference between the Oregon National Guard and, some of the bigger components is that we fall underneath the governor. So it's basically, if you're in the National Guard, your number one, first thing that you go to is community service. So, helping with forest fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, stuff like that, being first responders to the people in your community. It's a really good program, especially for young kids, because I never thought that I would like recruiting, but I actually am passionate about it because these kids get to go to college 100% free by being members here. And it's only by doing 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. And honestly, with the way that kids are kind of little wimps these days, it makes them a little tougher.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yep.
We kind of become a society where it's like everyone just expects to get everything with giving nothing back. And that's the biggest thing that I really do love about my job, is that you do get to give back to the community.
Just like what JFK said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I mean, that's one of the best things that I could ever say. But especially kind of going back to the health and fitness aspect, how would you say it? Because there is an obesity crisis. I mean, America is getting fatter, slowly by slowly. Has that been a difficult strategy for you too, being a recruiter, knowing that the kids are getting more obese than they were, let's say, 20 years ago?
100%. Most of the kids that walk into my office do not meet the qualifications to be in the military. And there's only so much you can do, right? So something that I have in my toolbox that some other people don't have is that I'm pretty good with nutrition and I'm pretty good with exercise. So I've helped a few different kids lose quite a bit of weight just to be able to join. But I like it because I'm helping them, but it's nice to see that they are passionate enough about doing something to lose that 35 pounds, So we have a gym in the Armory, which is, I work at an armory, not a storefront. It's not like, hey, I'm like, you guys can come in whenever you want. You can work out, and it's really fun to see them change. And sometimes it's difficult because you want to, I wouldn't say force them to change, but you almost have more motivation than they do. And so they pull at your heartstrings. And then when they let you down, you kind of realize, like, I invested all this time in you and I want you to do so well. And some people just don't have it in them. And you see it more and more with younger kids these days.
Yeah, I could totally understand that. And I always had this question when I was thinking, I'm a military historian through college. I mean, that's just some of the hugest. I mean, whenever we tour the East Coast, I'd always have to go and visit like the Civil War battlefield, stuff like that. I'm just really into that stuff. And I was just wondering, when you were in the Army, how much of a say do you have where you go, where you're shipped out? Do you have any say at all in that, or do they just basically say, you know what, you're going to this place, tough luck?
Yeah, you don't have you don't have a say.
Yeah.
You go where they need you,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons I think that I'm stuck in recruiting right now, is
Yeah.
because they're like, hey, you're a good recruiter.
Hmm.
You're meeting the needs of the Oregon National Guard. So you do have to accept
Hmm.
that when you join the military, you kind of lose that freedom of, moving
Yeah.
where you want all the time.
Yeah. I just had a couple of friends where they just laid out a few options. They're like, you can either go to Germany, you can go to Japan, or you can go to Korea. Pick one of the three. And then they're just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
when you
yeah,
when you initially enlist,
yeah.
you kind of give them your wish list,
Oh, okay.
and generally, um, you'll get one of the three that are on your wish list for your initial tour.
Yeah.
But as far as deployments go, or being assigned, orders
Hmm.
to go
Yeah.
somewhere, yeah, you just smile and say, all right, thank
Thank you,
you.
sir. Yep. Thanks. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. So now going back to your sort of competing, what would you say when it came to your first prep? What was that experience like? Because a lot of people that I have on here, I mean, just getting in shape in and of itself and that diet and nutritional change can be tough enough just for them. But going on prep is just taking it up a whole nother notch. What was that experience like for you that first time being on prep?
It was actually probably the easiest and most fun one I've had, because most people that prep for a show, the first time, they've never been in that good a shape in their life. So maybe you're tired, maybe you're a little hungry, but those daily changes where you're looking at yourself, naked or whatever, you're like, all right, I can do this. And you're just like amazed at what your body can do. I'd say my first prep, I didn't, obviously get to as low of body fat as I did for my second one. So I think that has something to do with it too, is, why I wasn't exactly dying.
Mhm.
But I do like structure. I do like routines and patterns. And I think that's why I do pretty decent when I'm dieting.
And the military is just so good in instilling, that, like you said, that discipline and that sort of, time. I mean, you usually get up the same time, you do the same amount of things. It's just drilled into your mind. Do you really think that helped you when it came to your prep? Still being able to maintain that discipline and that, just that drive that a lot of competitors have?
I think so, yeah. I think that something that people in the military, and it doesn't even matter what branches, you go through things where you know that it sucks, but it's going to end. And
Mhm.
you kind of just embrace, one of the sayings is like, embrace the suck, right? So I think that there are some people that aren't in the military that have that tough mentality that can do it. But I think that life experiences and looking at like the bigger picture of what really matters and what's endurable and what's not, um, plays a big factor into that. But I fall victim to being a little baby when I prep too, so I can't really say that I'm super tough all the
Yeah, I
time.
mean,
There's
everyone has their breaking point. Everyone just after eating all that chicken or all that rice or whatever they have all the time. I mean, obviously everyone's gonna go crazy maybe just after a little while. But when you were
Yeah.
getting started out, one of the huge myths I love to bust is it's gotten better over like the last 5 years, I'd say, thanks to Instagram. But a lot of women still have that fear where if they touch one weight, they're just gonna hulk out and gain 50 pounds of muscle and just become like Dwayne the Rock Johnson overnight. I mean, it's one of those fears where I was like, hey, sign me up if that's a thing that really happens to you when you start working out. Sign me up. Did you ever have that fear when you were starting out? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you hear it from women a lot. What is your main response to that?
You wish. No,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, um, I don't think people realize that diet is going to be all of it, and it's also going to be your body composition. For me, I was actually, I mean, even though I look like, She-Hulk and whatever all the time, I actually, for most of my adult life before I started weight training, weighed more than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And really what it comes down to is like your genetics, right? Do you put on muscle easily? And if you do put on muscle easily, like there's still things that you have to do to make it like the best environment to grow muscle, like eating enough protein, eating enough carbs. If you're lifting weights and living off lettuce and chicken, maybe you'll put on a little bit of muscle, but all of those things, you can. That's what bodybuilding is, right? You sculpt your body the way that you envision it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a formula for everything. You just kind of have to figure it out on your own. Now, could I be super, super thin and, downsize. I don't know, maybe if I did yoga and didn't eat for like a year,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons that that I got a hold of you, first of all, is that I saw that you were with Haley Delph, and Haley Delph was one of the earlier guests that we had on this podcast. How did you meet Haley Delph, and how did you guys sort of get in touch?
oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to say that it's because of my boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is. So my boyfriend runs Advices, and Haley and her husband Ryan were big fans of the show, and then they ended up talking to him, and somehow me and Haley ended up talking because I don't know if it was like we were both posting ourselves in the Advices shirts or something like that. I don't even really remember, but when it comes to like sports with women and muscle, it's kind of a small community, right? So you kind of all end up reaching out to each other, via Facebook or Instagram and something like that. And you definitely have more to talk about with them than you do other people. So we met that way. I think we were just going back and forth talking a little bit. And then we met at the Olympia this year and lifted together and like hit it off right away. I think we were planning on meeting up before that because we had, I don't know if it was like the Arnold or we go to all these different shows. So like eventually we were going to run into each other.
Yeah, she was great. And then I saw that you guys were together, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, I totally have her on. But now going back, I mean, one of my big things is that I am personally, like, as you can see, a very pale person. I'm not, just my thick Norwegian skin. I'm not going to be good out in the sun. But when it comes to the tanning process, what was that experience like for you the first time putting that tanner on? Because a lot of people we have talk, it really makes everything pop out. You see muscles that you never thought that you ever had. What was that experience like for you the first time putting that tanner on?
You know what? I didn't really think about it too much. The only thing that I thought about was staining all the hotel toilets.
Yep.
It just comes off like everywhere. And actually, it's not really that bad. The day of the show, the glue to keep yourself in your bikini sucks. But it's like the couple days after where you're trying to get it off and you just look like an Oompa Loompa. That's the part where you're like, whatever. But it's kind of part of it. I think that when you go to a show and you have like the hair and the makeup and the tan and stuff like that, like it really just brings everything that you've been trying to do together, and it gets you kind of excited.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't have that experience. One of the things that I really love to bring to light is prep brain. A lot of people don't understand just what happens to the brain for a certain amount of time that you've had it dieted down and you're just working out, how the brain can sort of be forgetful. We've had stories of people who just forget, like their car keys, and they get into their car and they're just simple average day stuff, but it becomes a lot more prevalent with prep brain. What has been your experience like with prep brain? And have you had any interesting stories where you've forgotten stuff or just had simple mind flares or anything like that?
Well, I think that I'm already pretty forgetful, honestly, but I actually, it's so dumb. I haven't been in a car accident since I was like 16 years old, and I didn't crash into anyone or anything like that. But I have a parking garage here at my apartment, and when you pull out there, the garage door comes open, and there's like a little yellow safety pole, and I drive a Jeep, like a big Jeep Grand Cherokee. And I thought that I gave myself enough clearance. I wasn't on my phone or anything like that. And I just like took out the passenger side door with that safety pole. Mm. And that was this last prep for North Americans. And I want to say it ended up being like $5,500 after my insurance just to get it fixed. And I at that point though, I just kind of laughed and I was like, all right, you know what can you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, there's little stuff like that. I mean, you got to think that, the brain is fed off fat, right? Mm-hmm. So when you get to really low body fat and you're not necessarily taking in enough fats, like of course you do fish oil and stuff like that, your brain's just not going to run as efficiently. And so when people say diet brain, I think that's for the most part what they're referring to. And there's little stuff like, being forgetful and stuff like that. But, for the most part, I think it's just everything moves slower.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. And I have a lot of up-and-coming musicians and bands as well as competitors on the show. And I like to ask sort of the same question. Probably my biggest question that I ask is, For up and coming bands, I always ask, what is that thrill? What is that feeling like performing live and being on stage? But for competitors, I think that also applies as well. What is that feeling like for you when you get to walk up on stage and, show off all that hard work that you've dieted and you've done all that for months on months, and to finally be able to go up there and sort of make it all worthwhile? What is that feeling like for you when you step on stage?
Well, I have horrible stage fright. So, it's terrifying. Now, I love posing and I love, I love bodybuilding and I love the presentation. And for some reason, I turn into just a mess on stage. And I've never really had that problem either because I talk in front of groups of people all the time. But I think that there's something like very vulnerable about being in front of a group of people in a tiny little bikini showing your body. I mean, that's what the sport is. You're going up there and showing your body to a bunch of people and having them judge you. I'm getting better, but I mean, realistically, I've done two, three. North Americans was the fourth time that I've ever done women's physique, and in women's physique you do a posing routine too. I pretty much black out every time and forget the whole routine. But yeah, it was the I've only been doing women's physique for 2 years, and so I've done shows pretty close together so that you can do more than one show, and so really just 2 years of competing in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's just so impressive because just able, like I always want to say, if you hold the general population, you would probably get a single digit percentage of people that would have the courage and just the drive to be able to do that and get up on stage. So that in and of itself is just commendable. But you also sort of mentioned the posing, and a lot of people don't realize that the posing for most competitors is the hardest thing. It's harder than the nutrition, it's harder than the dieting, it's harder than the training. How has the posing been when it comes to you? Was that an easy thing to sort of pick up on, or has it always just been a work in progress?
It's been a very, very slow work in progress. It's kind of like when you're first learning to lift weights, right? You have to have that connection to know exactly where you need to be to present yourself in the best way, right? So, especially with bodybuilding, one thing that works for one person isn't going to work for the other. You're trying to, you are trying to show off your assets, but you're also trying to hide your flaws. And I think that it also can be really stressful for people because you put all this time and effort into your diet and training, and then you think to yourself like, okay, well, I could totally screw up all of this by posing badly because you're not presenting your physique the way that you want to. And I think that at least with me, and I don't know if it's with other people, it puts a lot of pressure on you. You're like, oh yeah, I look great, but I'm going to go up there and look like an idiot. I'm not opening my back up. I'm not putting my elbows high enough. And I think that I do about a 20-week prep.
Oh, wow.
You work for 20. Yeah. I like to go slow and steady.
I was gonna say, yeah, we usually are like 12 weeks, but yeah, 20. That's incredible. Yeah.
Well, I try not to lose my legs, so I try to just go slow and steady. But you put all this work in for 20 weeks for 30 seconds, you can screw it up. I think that for most people, whether they want to admit it or not, is a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because like I've had bands in here and they get to perform for up to an hour, and then it's like you're only on stage for bodybuilding for like 30 seconds, and even the top level ones are only on there for like 2 minutes. Is like I think the max, or it's some ridiculous amount, like small amount. So it is all that work just for that split amount of time. And what is your favorite pose, and what is your least favorite pose?
Okay, so my favorite pose, and it's probably because it's my best pose, is my back double. Women, at least in women's physique, probably at the national level and lower, it's usually the one that's the hardest for women to do, just because a lot of women have problems with like their hamstrings and like their glutes coming in. And because of my genetics and my little man build or whatever, I've always been able to come in pretty good from the back. So that's my favorite. And then I also like my side tricep because I used to be really embarrassed of my arms. I always had really big arms growing up. I'd be like trying to hide them, in pictures.
Yeah.
And then when I started bodybuilding, everybody would compliment them. And it was kind of like a weakness turned into a strength. So anything with my arms, like posing my arms, like side tricep and stuff like that, I really like. The one that I still am uncomfortable with is probably the front relax, just because I do have the insecurity of my quads, right? And then abs and thighs is so hard for me to do. I've gotten better. I've
Mm.
gotten a lot better, but it's definitely like a hard one to hit without looking like awkward. You're like,
Yeah.
or falling over. Like
Yep.
that's one of the fears I have too. Is like, hey, I'm gonna turn and fall over.
Yeah, we've had so many people that say abs, yeah, is the hardest one. Was that hard for you starting out though too? Most people don't realize when you guys are hitting those posts, you are flexing every muscle in your body. Like everything has to be on point. Most people, like, if they see you do like a front double or whatever, they're like, oh, they must just be doing bicep. No, wrong. They're flexing literally everything that they have. Was that hard for you to sort of get that mind to muscle connection of being able to like hit everything at the right moment?
Yeah, it's like I kind of do. I kind of came down to a system where I give myself counts, like starting from the ground, like 1, 2, 3, and then just eventually, after you do it enough, you get the the mind muscle connection where you can go into it automatically. Abs and thigh, though, I didn't honestly. I've never done it right until this last show, and even then, like I don't think I did it right every time. But I got some help with my posing, and I found a way to make it work for me. But yeah, I never did that one right until this year.
Yeah, that's just such a hard pose in and of itself. And probably my most important question that I ask is that people don't realize that when you guys are in your stage presence and your stage weight and your stage look, it is not a sustainable look. I mean, you've sort of manipulated your body through all of the dieting and all of the working out into a look that is not sustainable. Like most people look at these competitors and some of them even tell me they're like, wow, they must look that good 365 days out of the year. And then I'm always like, oh, well, not necessarily. But what are some things?
Not if you're healthy.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's what I like to say too. But what are some ways that you specifically sort of use mentally in order to make it so that you don't go crazy thinking like I am not going to be able to stay this lean. All of the hard work that I put into looking this way, it is not a sustainable look. I am going to healthily put on a few pounds afterwards. What are some ways that you sort of make sure to prepare yourself for that?
Okay, so I have never been lean
Mm-hmm.
ever in my entire life. I mean, I've been athletic looking. By the time I get done dieting, I hate the way I feel. My joints hurt. I hate sitting in a chair for a long period of time, and I'm ready to get fat.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's a lot of girls that I know that reverse diet to try to slowly put on the weight. I don't really do that. I mean, I'm probably like 10 pounds up the next day.
Wow.
And realistically, I mean, just from water alone.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I mean, I'll go even within a few weeks. I mean, I'll go back up 20 pounds. I mean, I probably stay about 20 to 25 pounds from what I am on stage. But I think that part of it is too is I just love food. I've always loved food, and I'm not one of those people that needs to go around being lean all year long. I want to go around being strong all year long. I want to be able to squat heavy or do a leg press heavy again and feel like I can really go push some weight because I enjoy training is the most fun for me out of all of it. So usually towards the end of the prep, it's not necessarily that like it's the diet and stuff like that. It's the fact that like I hate feeling weak in the gym. I hate like having my weight go down, like lifting weight go down and so on. So I think that maybe I'm a little different than a lot of girls. I'm just like, yeah, I want to eat a bunch of food and be strong and good.
Hey, yeah, that's awesome though, because I mean because we've heard so many stories about people that just they get depressed and they get anxious because they aren't going to be able to look that way. But I mean, just to have a good outlook on it is just such a refreshing thing to hear. Now, what is your go-to place to go to eat after a show?
After a show, you know what? I can't figure it out because like you build up all this food that you want in your head, and then you go to this one place and you're just kind of like disappointed. What I tried to do was we tried to go to McDonald's after my show in North America because I love McDonald's. Like people lie when they say they don't like it, but we went to this McDonald's in Pittsburgh and it was like downtown, and McDonald's is usually like pretty generic across the board, right? It was the worst McDonald's I have ever been to. Yeah. So we ended up actually going to this other place in Pittsburgh that like I guess they specialize in like these sandwiches with like French fries and stuff on it. And we did that and it was pretty good. But I never really have anything specific that I want because I think each time I diet, I start craving different things.
So is there like a specific food that you really think stands out in the Portland or Oregon area that really makes it unique to that area?
You hear a lot of people talk about like voodoo donuts.
Ooh.
And then I don't know, we have a lot of culture here. So you have a lot of like, Indian food, Middle Eastern food. you have food from all over. I think that there's like more restaurants and bars here than anything. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a lot of breweries, like
Yeah.
so many breweries, it's ridiculous. I think that everybody's kind of on that wagon now, but I'm pretty sure it started in the Portland area.
In Minnesota, I mean, we have just that huge Scandinavian population. We're the biggest Scandinavian population in the country. So it's a lot of lefse and lutefisk, which is a type of fish, and then lefse is a type of bread that you have. And then, but we also are famous for Juicy Lucy's, which if you don't know what those are, they're hamburgers where the cheese is cooked inside of the meat. So
yeah, I've never heard of that.
So when you bite into the hamburger, it's so good because then the cheese melts out from the meat. It is, yeah, it's really good. So I highly recommend that if you are ever in the area. But now, probably two of my favorite questions that I like to ask for this whole podcast. My first one is one of the things that I discovered when I started working out and getting bigger and getting stronger. The one negative thing for me was you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. You're going to get asked every time people come home with groceries. You're the one expected to lift all the groceries in. Have you found that because of the way that you look and the way that, I mean, people look at you, that you are expected, or they might expect you to do like favors for them when it comes to, you know, helping them lift stuff or helping them do chores?
I haven't really experienced that, but that's just the kind of person I am.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime someone moves or, you know, anytime anyone really needs anything, you know, I've always kind of gone and helped.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I get the comments here and there, like, "Oh, you must be really strong," and this and that, and it's like, all right, thanks, but you know, I mean, I got 4 brothers, and
Oh, yeah.
we're all older now and stuff like that, so we're kind of grew up in the kind of family where you just, you know, you help your neighbor out, you help each other out, and it's like,
Yeah.
But I don't have people in my apartment building ask me to move things, so.
Thank God. Can you beat up all your brothers now? Are you the strongest one out of all 5 of them, or all 5 of you?
I mean, I don't think any of them would mess with me, but my brothers are like 6'3", like 200 and something pounds. I'm actually the shortest person in the family.
Oh, wow.
I don't even really know. Yeah, I think the shortest person in the family other than me would be like my mom, who's like 5'7",
Wow.
5'7", something like that. And then I have a younger sister who's like 5'9", 5'10". She plays at college basketball.
Yeah. See, I'm the exact opposite. Where my family, no one is over 5'10" in my family, but I'm 6'3", so I'm the outlier too in my side. So yeah, I get that a lot. And then my favorite question to ask, and like I always say before I ask, this is a multi-million-dollar idea. So anyone out there, when it comes to clothes for fit women or women that bodybuild or women who are in shape, your clothing options are very limited. Like I always like to say, if you have big shoulders, dresses are kind of out of the picture. Jeans are another thing that we've heard where it doesn't really work out the best as well. What are some ways that you use to sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options are limited?
I mean, it's pretty easy for me because I wear a uniform every day.
Oh, yeah.
And they're unisex. I think they actually just came out with women's ones. But other than that, like I wear a lot of tank tops, or I wear men's like small t-shirts. Jeans, I just kind of wear either the stretch ones or baggy. I mean, it does get frustrating. Like coats and stuff like that are like for me, because obviously like my back is probably one of the bigger things. Like coats are frustrating because it's like it pulls like right here, and you're like, oh god. But you know, just wearing something a little bit bigger. I'm not really one to like, you know, want to wear something super tight anyway.
Yeah.
But jeans do suck really bad. Even for me, even for my legs, like I want them to be bigger. It's still like a problem every time.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. Like I say, everyone, if you can come up with a way for that to work for people, that's a huge idea, and you'd make a lot of money for that.
Well, so now, apparently they do make jeans for like bodybuilders now, but it's like I don't know. I haven't tried.
They probably got to be super expensive though too, because that's what I'm thinking. That they probably charge some ridiculous amount. But now we go to my personal favorite and the audience personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire at the end here, where I'm going to ask Lyndsay here about a dozen or so questions and see how she stacks up to all of our other health and fitness guests that we've had on. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Oh wow. I listen to, I wouldn't say one particular song, but I listen to the Carl Carlton Pandora station. So I listen to just kind of like funk music when I work out.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always nice to have a good variety. I mean, I'm like an old school like Metallica or Iron Maiden, where I need that to work out. But yeah, everyone has so many different tastes. It's so great to hear. But for our second question, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
How many people have said The Rock?
Oh, I'm just going
Probably
to
a lot.
say, when this gets posted, you will probably be our 50th health and fitness guest, and he has been the answer, I think, 44 times.
Okay, so
You can say The Rock, but
uh,
if you have another guess, yeah, it doesn't matter.
I don't actually know his name, but the guy who played on Game of Thrones, who was the
The
wife
Mountain.
of not the Mountain. Oh,
Mm.
he would be good too. No, the guy that played the husband of the Mother of Dragons when he died. What was his name?
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking, the Khal Drogo guy.
Yeah, Cal
Yeah.
Drogo. Yeah,
He plays Aquaman, yeah, I totally forgot
yeah,
what his name is, yeah. But yeah,
yeah.
that would be,
He looks like he probably gets it pretty good.
yeah, that would be awesome too. And then I'm actually having the Mountain coming on in a couple of weeks on this podcast, so that'll be cool to have on. And that's, but yeah, the
Yeah,
Mountain.
that guy's super nice. I met him, I think, at the Arnold.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's just that dude. I mean, you plus if you're that big, you have to be nice to people because people are just gonna be afraid of you just by looking at you. So you kind of gotta develop that. I mean, like I've always said, he might be the one guy where if he tries to do like a pull up or something, he might break the bar. So you gotta be careful when you're that big. But
Gentle Giants. I think
oh
is
yeah, absolutely, yeah, he's so nice. I mean, he's come to watch the Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings. He's come there because he's Icelandic. So I mean, he's awesome. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Melissa McCarthy, because I
Ooh.
think she's hilarious, and I think that like whatever we would do in the workout would be super fun.
Here's the problem with that though, because I have our most popular answer is Kevin Hart, which would be my personal. But with people like that, you're not going to be able to get a workout in because it's going to be so funny that they're just. I don't know if you'll be able to get a workout. I mean, you'll probably get the best ab workout of all time in there for that session. But I don't know. But that would be great too.
I think that you can motivate people in different ways and cater to personalities to
Yeah,
get the goal accomplished, and
yeah.
I think she'd be great.
Oh yeah, she's so funny that would definitely be one of those where absolutely, yeah. So now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Mm, always need to have probably sriracha
Mm.
and
I'm gonna sound really stupid, but what is sriracha?
sriracha.
Yeah, never heard of it.
It's like a hot sauce. It's like like an Asian hot sauce. It's a red chili sauce.
Oh, never heard of it, but yeah, sriracha, everyone. Okay, then I'll have to look into that, see
Or
what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
sriracha. It's got a rooster on it and a green cap.
Oh yeah, I
You
think I
probably
might
see.
know. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
that good with that cooking. Yeah, so yeah, probably yeah.
they have it at like most like Chinese
They
restaurants and
probably
stuff
have.
like
Yeah,
that.
I've probably seen it before. It's just nothing that I've like heard. I'm very bland when it comes to my food, so yeah, I probably wouldn't. Yeah, so. And then you had something else, or was that it?
I mean, just the basics. Besides that, I really like. It's easy for me to eat bad food, so I only buy what I am eating on
Mhm.
my diet for the most part. So if I want something that's off of it, I have to like consciously make the bad decision to go down to the Lebanese place next door and
Yeah.
order some lamb.
That's a good idea too, because I sometimes struggle with that too, where you just gotta limit it so that you basically, yeah, like you said, you have to make that bad decision and go wholeheartedly into it. For honestly, one of the most surprising answers we've had, mustard has been on here. It's been pretty popular, which I never did get, but for bodybuilders, apparently that's it's got like zero fat or zero something, so they put it on.
Yeah,
They
it
put it on
doesn't have a
everything.
lot of calories. It
Yeah,
doesn't have fat or carbs. It's like
yeah,
um, basically some taste to spice up your bland
yeah,
food.
absolutely. So, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Ooh. That is our fifth mint chocolate chip, so that is now in second place behind just regular chocolate. And my personal favorite though is chocolate chip cookie dough blizzard. That you get those at Dairy
Um,
Queen. Oh yeah.
they used to have a mint Oreo blizzard at Dairy Queen, and they
Oh
don't
yeah, I
have
remember
it
that.
anymore.
Yeah, I remember that.
They're
Yeah, they
so
don't.
good.
They don't have that. So now, what would be one thing that you would change about the sport of bodybuilding if you had the all knowing power to do so?
What I would change about it? Mm, I don't know. I mean, I could say that maybe there should be some more stipulations on who should compete.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that sounds mean, but it's not a sport made for everyone. And if you have to push your body to a point to be competitive with people that it's made for
Mm-hmm.
naturally, it's not healthy for you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, and along with like that, with like weight loss stories and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that is completely commendable, but there should be another place for that because, you know, some people may be happy for you and like that, you know, and respect your story, but other people that are very serious about the sport are offended by that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And for me personally, I mean, I've never competed or anything, but if I could change one thing about it, I'd also just, like kind of what we talked about earlier, I'd make it so that people could understand better the fact that people who do compete, they do not look like that 365 days out of the year. Cause then people would get upset that if they don't get those results where they're like, oh my God, these people look like that. And then I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's, they work their tail off for it. And it's not just something that they're given. So it's like, that is not a look that, 99% of the people could achieve. That's the look that those 1% that, like you said, are genetically blessed already with that body that is good, that is primed for competing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just another thing that I'd like to do is just
Yeah.
bring
Well, and the
awareness.
problem with that though is social media. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody just posts when they're completely shredded.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these little Instagram famous fit people
Yep.
are pushing out misinformation to people.
Mm-hmm.
Your average physique, women's competitor is going to kind of just look like a curvy power lifter 90% of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people that I feel like are putting out misinformation about the sport of bodybuilding, I'd say like 70% of them don't even compete.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of my big pet peeves kind of like with that, it doesn't even have to do with the Instagram people, but one of my things with that is celebrities who like post these stupid workouts of them like curling like 3 pounds and being like, oh my God, getting ready for my movie or whatever. And the next thing you know, in a month, they're just dieted down and just shredded. It's like, no, that's not the way that you got lean. Cause then people who watch that, then they'll be like, oh, I just have to do that and then do something like that. And then I'll look good like that. It's like, no, you're portraying it sort of a wrong way of how they lose weight. So it's just a lot of things too. But now, out of all, I mean, for the people who follow you on Instagram, what would be the most surprising thing that people who followed you would be surprised to know about you if they met you in person other than your height?
People always say to me that they think that I'm like 170 pounds or 80 pounds, or they're like, you look huge,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. When people see me in person, they are like, wow, you're not that big. I mean, I look muscular, yeah, but people are always really surprised with like the way that I actually look in person. I still wear like, small, small t-shirts and size, probably not 4 jeans now, but probably, somewhere close to that. Like I'm not like a huge person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
Oh, okay. So I just started watching Gifted.
Mm.
I ran out of other shows. So I started watching Gifted and then The Resident on Hulu. But I love like anything Marvel, superhero, anything like that. So I watch a lot of those kind of shows.
What is your favorite TV show of all time?
Probably. Oh, I don't know. That's hard. I really like stuff on like HBO and Showtime and stuff like that. Like I love Game of Thrones. I love Shameless. I am one of those girls that has watched every episode of Grey's Anatomy.
That's awesome. So yeah, I gotta say a shout out to my older brother. When I didn't start watching Game of Thrones until after like the 4th season, and I binge watched the first couple seasons, and then my brother, being the nice and awesome person that he is, told me that when an episode called The Red Wedding came up, that I should invite him down here so he could see my reaction to it. So then he filmed me watching it, but he didn't release it. But yeah, thanks Nolan for that one, for not giving me the heads up on. Yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this is one of my favorite shows of all time. Then after I saw that, so that made that show really just one of my go-to shows, absolutely. But what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
Oh, I don't. I used to watch movies more than I probably do now, but back in the day, I was like a sucker for like any Drew Barrymore movie. So like Never Been Kissed or Ever After or any of that stuff. I just always thought she was great. So I would kind of binge watch some of those, or I would watch any movie with Freddie Prinze Jr. in it back in the day, like
Summer Catch.
Yeah, or she's all that, or
Hmm.
something like that. And but you know, he kind of fell off.
Yeah, I
And
know. He runs his own podcast, and that's about the only time I ever see him. Like I watch some of his when he has like some of his other celebrity friends on. But yeah, he did kind of fall off the map. I gotta say, my guilty pleasure movie is, you probably would never guess it, but it's my ultimate date night movie, The Princess Bride. You get that movie on. I mean, I'll never admit it to my guy friends, but that's
yeah,
my guilty pleasure movie. So yeah, Princess
a lot of
Bride.
people really like that movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was all right.
Yeah, yeah. It has. I mean, it's so quotable, and it's just it's just one of
Mm-hmm.
those movies where if it's on, I'll stop and give it a watch. But now, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, like, "Oh my God, you look amazing. I want to sort of get into a more healthy and fit lifestyle," what would be the best piece of advice you would give that person?
Um, the best, and actually that has happened a few times to me. The thing that I say to them is, you can make a better choice for yourself every single day. Give yourself some time and some credit, and just try to accomplish little things, because eventually all of those little things turn into big things. You know, you could sit there and try to explain to them how to eat, but really, if someone has the determination to change their life, they have the capability to look those things up on their own. They're not going to remember you telling them, like, hey, you should start out with
Hmm.
your carbs and fats like this and so on as a baseline. Like, no, you just say, hey, how about tomorrow you give up soda? How about next week you give up chips?
Hmm.
And there are a lot of people that I know that, started that way and have made really big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, for the questionnaire segment, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Stop getting tattoos. I got a lot of tattoos when I was pretty young, and I'm actually kind of like paying for it now by getting laser, and it's very expensive.
Yeah. What was the first tattoo that you got?
Oh, so the first tattoo I got, I was actually 16.
Ooh.
It's gone now. It
Mhm.
was on my back. It was like a sun and moon kind of thing, like very early 2000s, like
Mhm.
whatever. Um, I had a friend who did it, and it actually turned out really well. But I had to like convince my mom for a while. I was like, "Oh, it's a henna tattoo." I was like, and eventually she's like, "Lyndsay, that henna tattoo's been on you for like 3 months. It's a real tattoo." And I was like, too late now. And she flipped out. But
Yeah.
yeah, I tried to hide it for as long
Mhm.
as I could. And then eventually she was like, I'm
Mhm.
not stupid.
And I gotta say, I've traveled to every part of the country besides the West Coast. I've never been up the West Coast, but what would you say is the best part about living in the Pacific Northwest?
I like, um, at least in Oregon,
Mhm.
I like the trees. We have the ocean, we have the mountain. If you go far enough east, you have the desert. The air is crisp. It rains like a decent amount, but it's not like it's pouring rain. It's kind of misty, and I
Mhm.
like the cold weather. But the Portland metro area itself is pretty
Mhm.
populated, but everywhere else in Oregon is a lot of country and a lot of nature, and
Mhm.
we have amazing forests with
Mhm.
hiking and rock climbing and snowboarding. It's kind of like you can kind of do everything here,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's what I like the most about it.
I gotta say, I've always wanted to go to the Pacific Northwest. When I think about that, I think about shows like Twin Peaks, where it's just, the trees and just, it seems like just such a beautiful place to visit. Minnesota's kind of similar, where we have Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then Duluth, where the only like major populated, and then other than that, it is
Hmm.
sparse communities. So I totally understand that. But now, what are some ways other than your Instagram? Are there any other ways that people could sort of get a hold of you if they had any training or nutrition advice, or do you offer any training or coaching?
I do not
Okay.
coach. I have helped people out with nutrition and stuff like that, like everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that for someone to be a good coach, um, you have to be very skilled in that
Mm-hmm.
department. So when people do a couple shows and then decide that they're a coach, I don't
Or one
necessarily really,
show.
I don't really
Yeah.
necessarily respect that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I help people out with like everyday kind of nutrition stuff, but it's really just me trying to like put them in the right
Mhm.
direction. If there's somebody that's wanting to compete or something like that, I have a lot of people that I'll refer them
Mhm.
to.
Awesome.
But I have like a lot of younger women that will kind of ask me about training and ask me about nutrition, and to me that's like, you know, just nice to help them out, because I didn't always have that. So if I can kind of spread any information to somebody, it's not something that like I charge for, you know. It's like it's just nice to help each other out, especially women. There's not that many of us that kind of really want to like, you know, band together, build muscle, and, you know, be, you know,
Absolutely.
be different, I guess, is what I would say.
Absolutely. And again, everyone, I'll leave the link to her Instagram page down below, and go and give her a follow. Like I say, you will be inspired to work out. You will be inspired to get off the couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. But the last little question part I'd like to ask you is, I'm a hopeless romantic myself. So for you and your boyfriend, how did you guys meet?
Oh, it's like not even like that cute. But so I was dieting for a show, and he was dieting for a show, and I remember he was on one of his podcasts talking one day, and I think I had talked to the guys a little bit, just like saying that I liked their show before, but I remember one day he was just kind of like talking about how crappy he felt. He was just like, he's like, you know what, guys, I'm not even gonna lie, I feel horrible right now. And it was just very real. It was like I was like, oh my God, you're speaking to me right now, because I was hating prep just at that particular day. So I reached out and I just said, hey, like, I feel like you were speaking directly to me, and it wasn't like anything like me trying to pursue the guy or anything like that. And then we kind of just talked like through our preps, and we kept talking for quite a while. And then after, I don't know, months and months of talking, we ended up meeting up, and we were friends. And then I guess we just hit it off.
That's awesome.
So through a podcast, that's how we met.
Through a podcast. So anything's possible, anyone. I think that's the message I like to get out there.
You don't need necessarily a dating app, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and again, you guys, we cannot thank Lyndsay enough for coming on the show. I mean, it was so great talking to you. And do you have anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
You know what? I don't really know. I guess just like shout out to anyone that follows me on Instagram. My gym in Forest Grove. I have a gym out here in Hillsborough. It's called Willpower. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Oh, no worries at all. And again, yeah. And again, you guys, Lyndsay, I'll leave the link down below for her Instagram. Everyone go and give her a follow. I mean, and like I said, so great having you on, and we really appreciate it, and definitely keep us posted. And are there any competitions that you're getting ready for now, or are you just sort of in the training process?
I'm in the training process, because here's the reality about competing. It's not healthy at the end, and you need to have an off season, and you need to have a real off season. So I think that I'm going to do USA's in July. And then if I don't get the result I want, then I'll do North Americans in Pittsburgh again this year. So I got third for my first big show, which is, you know, I'm proud of that. I think that I could have done better, but those will be my maybe two shows that I'll be doing next year.
Oh, that's awesome. So again, everyone, go and check her out if you're in that area then for those shows. And again, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.